It's not. Oh, yes. It's. What is it? Yeah, it's available. Yeah. Oh, you're kidding. Cycle overdose someday. I'll back you up. And she's supposed to be here soon. Okay.
Yeah.
Gonna be sure.
All right, guys, I think we'll go ahead and get started, even though I think the chair will come in a little bit. So Sharon, if you want to kick us off. Oh, microphone.
Okay.
Welcome to the regular meeting of the Design Review Board of, what is today?
November 8th, sorry about that.
This meeting is called to order. I'll request staff to call the roll for members who are present and not.
Okay, Board Member Alexin.
Here.
Member Kent,
Here.
Member Summers,
Here.
Vice Chair Kowalski,
Here,
and Chair Reggie is absent at the moment, as well as Board Member Blaney.
next we'll move to the meeting procedures. I'd like to ask staff to address how public comment will work this evening.
Absolutely. So good evening, everyone. So in addition to accepting written comments up to the DRB meeting, staff is accepting public comments in person at City Hall, as well as over the telephone or through Zoom. Members of the public are invited to participate via conference call at 669-444-9171. And the meeting ID is 831-0781-8748. If you're participating by telephone and wish to provide comments, press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period for the item you'd like to speak on. This virtually raises your hand. Once it is your turn and you hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate, at that time, please press *6 to unmute yourself. You can then speak, introduce yourself, and you'll be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak. And if you've submitted comments prior to the meeting by email or letter, those have been forwarded to the Design Review Board.
Let me now describe meeting procedures. We will begin with a staff report for each item, followed by the applicant's presentation. Members of the public will then be invited to speak. Community members on the conference call can speak when they receive the notification. They've been unmuted. Comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board will have the opportunity to ask questions of staff or the public after each segment. We will close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the board for discussion. Anyone with an urgent communication on a topic not on the agenda may address the board at this time. Please know that anything raised has not been noticed or agendized, so there will be no discussion on these items.
Okay, so again, to comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. If commenting by phone, please press *9. Once you hear notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6. So with that, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on an item not on the agenda, or if anybody through Zoom would like to do so, please raise your hand in Zoom. And seeing none.
We'll now move on to the consent calendar, which has one item, minutes from the May 17 design review meeting. Approval of the design review board meeting minutes of May 17th, 2022. Are there any comments from the public on this item of the consent calendar?
So once again, if you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. If by phone, please press *9. So anybody want to provide comments on the meeting minutes from the May meeting? Seeing none.
The chair asks if the board is prepared to make a motion.
I move to approve as submitted.
A second.
Please announce your name prior to the motion or second.
Jeff Kent, member Kent, moves to approve the minutes as submitted.
Member Alexin seconds.
Is there any discussion? If not, let's move to a vote.
Okay, Board Member Alexin,
Yes.
Member Kent,
Yes.
Member Summers,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kowalski.
Yes.
All right, and Chair Reggie is absent.
So that has passed. And now the approval of the Design Review Board meeting minutes of September 7th. The recommended action is approved as submitted. Are there comments from the public on this item for the consent calendar?
So once again, if you'd like to provide comments on the minutes from the September DRB meeting, you can raise your hand in Zoom or come up to the dais to the podium in City Hall. And seeing none.
Is the board prepared to make a motion? And please announce your name prior to the motion or the second.
Member Kent moves, we approve the minutes as submitted.
Member Summers seconds.
Is there any discussion? If not, we move to vote.
Okay, Board Member Alexin,
Yes.
Member Kent,
Yes.
Member Summers,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kowalski.
Yes,
Okay, motion passes.
motion passes. We'll now move on to the action items of the agenda tonight. 380 Margarita Drive, new single-family house.
And sorry, a little unusual, but just in case there's any members in the audience or on Zoom who are here for the other item on the agenda regarding 275 and 281 Coleman Drive, please be aware that the applicant has requested this item be removed from the agenda tonight. So they are seeking to pursue a different path. So I just want to let you all know, if you are here for that item for the Coleman project, we will not be going into deep discussion on that item. So with that, want to pass it along to Renee for the item at hand for 380 Margarita. Yeah, if you're interested, please email the planning email. It's planning@cityofsanrafael.org and just say I'm interested in any updates on this. We'll make sure we include you in any updates. Yeah.
If there's nothing else, I'd like to request the staff report on 380 Margarita Drive.
All right, well, that would be from me. My name is Renee. I'm the staff planner on this project tonight. I am going to just share my screen here, so bear with me for just a moment. There we go. Okay, so we are here. Is it sharing the screen? Oh, no,
It's not sharing.
I don't, it is not. Share. There, now it's sharing. Slowly but surely. Thank everyone for your patience and our coming in person and sharing on screen. So we're here tonight to talk about 380 Margarita Drive. This is a new single family residence on a current vacant lot at a very high place in the city that has yet to be developed, this particular lot. First, I want to acknowledge in terms of the design review board's role and what we're going to be discussing tonight. While this is not officially a conceptual design review, the materials available are more conceptual in nature than you may otherwise have for a project at this stage. The design, as we'll discuss, is in conflict with the existing hillside design guidelines, which are separate from the development standards, but it is a piece of the development standards of this planned development district. So I would like to just make sure that we do focus on those pieces of it. If questions do arise regarding previous plans, the applicant is here tonight, as well as I can pull up any plans that are available. I have them all ready to go. But I do want to focus on those specific aspects of the design guidelines that are in conflict with this current design, which I'll go into a little bit more detail. So this property is part of Plan Development District 1808, which is the Villa Margarita Plan Development District. It includes two parcels. Can you see my cursor here? On the higher parcel being 380 Margarita and this lower parcel here. When this plan development district was originally approved, it was approved with two single family residences with very specific design standards. This also included this small access road, which is existing, which is where the new residents will be having access from. As it's difficult to see here, maybe should have highlighted it, but you can see my cursor here. This is an outline of the single family residence that was originally proposed, the design of which was more in keeping with the Mediterranean style we do see on the hillside, 3 stories, gabled roof, etc. I will also say that this does require environmental and design review as a new residence on a hillside. It also requires zoning administrator approval because of the changes to the design. And the design board is being asked again to comment on the contention with the hillside design guidelines, but also the taller than 3-foot retaining walls. So the site plan here, we can see, this is the bottom of the property. The majority of the property will be retained in its hillside state. We have the access from the existing roadside coming up at a driveway that similarly reflects that originally approved. The residence seen here, more modular than the original approval. This is the floor plan. It's a primary residence in this larger piece with the pool attached. There's also a detached garage with an in-law unit that is not an ADU. Just as a note there. I'm showing some sections of the building. This represents the large windows that are being proposed, as well as the relationships of the 2 buildings to each other. Again, if there's more information that you'd like to see projected, please let me know and I can bring those up as well. I am including many of the renderings in this project. I believe they better represent what we are here to talk about today, which are the design guidelines that I'll more focus on. What I want to bring the board's attention to are the elements that some of which are more flexible, some of which are not. The piece that is most prominent as a part of the design guidelines is the large panes of glass, the windows, fixed and I believe some open, mostly fixed on the southeast portion, as well as partially on the accessory building. This is also a retaining wall for the pool. It's approximately 17 feet, and there are up to 9-foot retaining walls along the driveway, which you can better see in following renderings. So I'll just click through these here. So a summary of the development standards focused for this property are from Plan Development District 1808. As with the Plan Development District was approved, this residence is fitting mostly in that it's within the development envelope, which was the building envelope, which was approved. That covered distance from the ridge line, setbacks, et cetera, that are in no conflict with our existing otherwise standards. The maximum height approved was 30 feet. This single family residence is approved to be a maximum of 16 feet tall. The retaining wall for the pool will be 17 feet, but as you saw, lower than the roof height of the residence. They are meeting the parking requirements as well, 2 covered spaces as well as 2 guest parking spaces. But the architectural standards in the Plan Development District did include a stucco residence with barrel tile roofing, and this is a more modern design. But any change to design does require zoning administrator approval. There are also, this is a summary, a lot of information, so I'm happy to dig a little bit deeper into the details as we go along. There is a lot of information in the staff report that was available to you as the board and to the public as well. They go into a lot of detail, these specific standards. If we'd like to make some of those points more clear, I'm happy to do so. But the 4 main items that I would like to focus on that are important to give comments moving forward are I'm going to go through the design guidelines that are available on the hillside and what this property has proposed that are in contention with it. So the building form, the hillside guidelines recommend that a large unbroken expanses wall be avoided. In this case, there is it's not a single pane of glass, it is broken up, but it is a large expanse of 2 primary materials. Flat roofs to be allowed only in non-visible areas. This is proposing a flat roof for both structures, which the visibility of that is something that should be up for discussion in terms of no residents above it, but it is a visible flat roof. Contrasting colors, the colors shown in the renderings are lighter colors. The applicant has expressed flexibility in that sense. The design guidelines also encourage darker tones for the roof specifically. And it also notes that walls and fences should not exceed 3 feet, and excessively high walls are prohibited. It doesn't say what excessively means necessarily. In this case, the hillside is very steep, and so the retaining walls, which would otherwise be seen by the design review as well, should be discussed. Building materials, encourage and discouraged building materials. Large areas of glass are discouraged. Reflective glass, of course, that's something that can be discussed, are discouraged, but are proposed here, as well as high contrast. And again, that's a flexible item. And I'll also point out that you can see in these design guidelines, when these are written, are very specific to a certain style. This design does differ from it. So that's a big piece of this conversation, is how are we looking at this design as opposed to what was originally approved. So that's it for my presentation. Again, I want to stress, maybe is not quite the right word, but the discussion to be related to these design features. So while there are not the level of architectural plans that may come to the board, I do believe that the renderings provided show a better picture of what it is that the board is here to comment on. Primarily the large wall of glass broken up with the mullions, the tall retaining walls for the pool and along the driveway, the flat roof, and the contrasting colors.
Does the board have questions of the staff or the applicant?
I have one. I'm a little curious. I mean, even though, there was a previously approved plan for this site, but this is pretty much a complete departure from that.
Yeah.
How does this end up being classified as a minor physical improvement?
New residences on hillside properties are considered minor physical improvements.
Because I thought the Coleman project that we were going to look at tonight I thought that was classified as a major in the staff report.
It depends on the level of work that's being done on the hill. There are some elements that could increase it to a major. I don't want to comment on exactly why that one was raised, but in this particular case, there's nothing in the project that would warrant a higher level of review than zoning administrator.
Yeah, I would just look at this and there doesn't seem to be anything minor about this at all. It seems to be a pretty big project.
Yeah, I think what Renee referring to the municipal code that really lays out
yes.
exactly what's minor and what's major, and it's very specific.
Yeah.
The scope of a minor is includes a new single family house.
Renee?
Yes.
When was the original style, which is very specific to the Mediterranean house, approved? How old is that approval?
That's a good question. I believe it is younger than what I assumed. The hillside design guidelines were, I think, last updated in the late 90s. The planned development district for this, I believe, was adopted in 2003, which I can confirm here. 2003, which is when the planned
Okay,
development
so
district was
19
adopted.
20 years old.
No, I'm pretty sure the design was approved in 08. I'm not sure, but in the materials I read, I might be wrong.
Oh, what I'm familiar with is the planned development district, which was approved in 2003. I
With
don't
the,
have
with the
material-
specific design of that home.
The specific materials I wasn't able to locate of any plans that were stamped.
Oh.
The information that I have is I can share here.
I'll send them to you.
A written design. I'm curious to see them, but it's the design elements are.
Yeah, I have
separate.
I have the
anyway.
plans of that house, so. I'm pretty sure it was approved in 08, and I think it all went all the way up to the council. I'm
Wow.
not sure. So, question to staff, is staff in receipt from this applicant or information from the fire department on the requirements for water storage, for fire suppression on this? And has the applicant shared or provided that information and how they're going to handle that particular complication of this site?
The applicant has provided information from that. The fire department has reviewed it, as well as the Marin Municipal Water District, who cannot service the site as is and requires the applicant to provide that equipment in order to service the site. And there's the civil engineer on the project has worked with our fire department to ensure that fire safety needs will be met. When appropriate, in terms of the sequence of the meeting, the applicant has provided some additional materials and can
Okay,
speak to
great.
those.
We'll ask the
questions.
applicant
Yeah.
and when appropriate. Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions, I'd like to open the public hearing.
Sorry, the DRB script is flawed. It should be now offering the opportunity for the applicant to provide a presentation. My apologies.
Okay, I'd like to offer the applicant an opportunity to speak.
My name is Will Kelty and I'm the applicant on this project and thanks for taking the time to take a look at it. My wife Annette is here with me tonight. And just by way of background, born and raised California, love this area. Been in San Rafael for about 12 years, running the hills about 5 times a week. I love the hills. It's one of the reasons why we found this location and we're so interested in living there. Just a couple of comments. I know the last person that had this under contract and was trying to develop it, maybe it's those plans that you were speaking of. It was a 3-year, maybe 4-story Mediterranean, 6,500 square foot house. To me, I get the homogeneous nature of a neighborhood. I get that. We live in the Eichler community. I grew up in an Eichler. We love the guidelines that are in Upper Lucas Valley that keep that a homogeneous community. But if you drive through that neighborhood, it's not, if you even look at the houses on the left, that's not a Mediterranean style house. It's not like it's a homogeneous community that we're trying to conform to. It is something that was, written into it, at the time that the parcels were split or what have you, but it's not something that's keeping with a homogeneous community. The community is more of individual style homes. And that's what this is. This is an individual style home. I like it better from the standpoint of it's not as in your face. This is half the size of the last proposal that somebody wanted to do with this project. When I had these renders done, the person that was doing the renders asked me to go get some photographs of what it would look like so he could drop the house in there. I couldn't get photographs of it. I actually went down the freeway when my best shot was heading north on the freeway and trying to take a picture out the window to try and see where it would sit on the hillside. Because if you're driving below it, if you're driving on the regular streets, you don't see it because of the topography of that area. So I know it looks like it's, it stands out like a sore thumb right there, but it really doesn't from the ground and from that perspective. He had to go to Google Earth and get views looking down onto the hillside in order to do the renderings. A couple other things about it. The wall that is in front, we left that without vegetation there. I like the natural state of the hillside. We don't plan to take out any trees. We are open to putting in trees or putting in vegetation that, might be consistent. For instance, in front of that cement wall by the pool, we're open to suggestions. For the render, the guy asked me what color to initially put in it. I just said white. I said, we're not tied to any specific color. We want it to blend into the hillside.
Mhm.
And the question is, what is the best color? Is it beige? Is it, is it to plan for green months? I guess we're getting hotter and hotter. So maybe it's brown, but we're open to things like that. And this is just, it's a 13-acre more or less lot. We're touching a very small footprint on it and leaving the rest. In fact, at one point I asked Robert from the fire department if the fire department could use the top piece of the land for anything to fight fires. And he's like, nope, sorry. So, but the intent is to leave it in its as close to natural state as possible, right? We're going to touch a very small piece of that property. And I'm hoping that you guys will see the validity of this. And Mr. Ken, I'd agree with you. It is a major project. I think any new family construction is actually a major project. I know the definition is minor, but it's significant. And I do a lot of development work, mostly multifamily. This is our personal home that we're talking about developing here. This is not a spec home. This is not a, this is for us to live. And that's why it's also single story, so we can retire there. Any questions that I might be able to answer?
I've got a few, yeah. And just a comment, no, yeah, it's definitely not a spec. Full disclosure, I did have a client looking at this property
Oh.
and to the public also. So I'm fully aware of this property. I was very excited to see the address when I saw it on the staff report. I was like, oh, what's someone going to do with it? So I'm excited you're proposing something on it, just so you know. I am cursed with having a little knowledge about the property, which hence was my question to staff about the fire suppression. So I'm going to ask you, because at the time, one of the things that was a huge problem is the fire department was requiring 100,000 gallon water tank
Yeah.
for the site in order for the fire suppression, because they need 800 gallons per minute or whatever for an hour. And you do the math, and it actually resulted in the prior proposal was 100,000 gallon tank. So when it comes to a design review application, I start to think that's a really large structure. So if we're starting to talk about a design review approval or our recommendation to staff on a project like this, the tank's going to be visible, and if not, it's going to be cost prohibitive. So where's the tank? What's it look like? These are important things for us to understand when we make a recommendation on a property, holistically what's going on there. So maybe something's changed, and you can share that with me. If are we still requiring a tank of that size?
So Robert had actually suggested that I speak with somebody from the county, just that because in the city, he had thought that there weren't any properties that weren't on natural water from the fire hydrant. And it turns out that that's actually not the case. The house right below us has a booster pump for that reason, and sprinklers. So, but I spoke with, in fact, some of the documentation, the 8.5 by 11 that you have in front of you. There's a couple things. There's an email from one of the unincorporated areas, fire folks, saying specifically that they require a fire pump, and in some extreme cases, they do require a tank. We also hired an independent fire consulting company, and you'll see that report in there as well. And it's recommending essentially a 750 gallon per minute pump, which is, I think, superior to, well, it's a similar setup to what the neighbor has.
Yeah, because they don't have enough flow. MMWD. I mean, you probably talked to Joe, the engineer,
Yes.
at length about this one. He knows all about it.
Yeah.
I actually was just brainstorming here. I'm wondering if you could do a fire suppression system. I know some higher end homes that some contractors I know worked on. They actually went no water. They went with a different
The
fire suppression
dry
system.
system?
Yes. So that might be a really interesting alternative that the fire department might play ball with. Something you might want to look at.
And
Um,
And in the plans, you'll see the civil engineer wrote a response yesterday to some of Robert's questions, and, you know, calling out the location of the fire hydrant and that sort of stuff, because we have to have a private fire hydrant that the fire folks can tie into.
your civil's excellent, by the way.
Oh, is he? He's been fun to work with. We've been
I've
working
known
with him
Lee
about a year and a
for
half now.
40 years, believe it or not. Okay, well, that answers me. So it's on your radar screen. I guess that was the biggest thing, but as it relates to design review, if this proceeds and all of a sudden there's this entire new structure there, I'm gonna imagine staff might be saying, oh gee, this thing's pretty big, and I don't want you to have to go through design review twice.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we don't want you to have to come back because of a tank. So, you know, so it should, hopefully it's on your radar screen, or if this comes back to us, maybe some of those questions will be looked at. So that was really my biggest one, because I knew it was a really big deal when I looked at this property,
Yeah.
and with Robert too. So you've talking to all the right people. So that answers that. Anyone else?
Just on your point, to clarify, so you will be on the city water system, but the extra equipment that was referred to in Renee's presentation is the additional pump and hydrant?
Yes,
Okay.
that's on me to
Okay.
put in an additional pump and put in a hydrant.
Okay.
And I believe, well, it's at the top of the driveway is where the location. for
Oh,
that
and
is.
have you considered an infinity pool? Because it would be incredible. It would be incredible.
Yeah, we had a slight issue with the pool because despite it being, close to 13 acres, we were about 1.5 feet outside the building envelope. So we had to shift the pool over slightly in order to do that. And as part of that, if we had to redesign it, we would have to push the entire house back in order to get the infinity edge to it. We could do it, but the pool guys are telling us that the width of the pool is not conducive to an infinity pool because it's kind of a thin, narrow lap.
This
pool.
might help with the screening also. It actually could be. Anyway, okay.
We could do that. if you want. That's one of those things we're negotiable.
So there was an issue with the pool. It was slightly outside of the building envelope. The building envelope is one of the strict development standards. If there were any portion of any structure, the driveway and retaining wall is not included outside of the building envelope, that would actually require a high level review. We need to go to planning commission, which is something that we addressed with the applicant, and they moved the pool over in response to
shifted the
that.
pool
So
over,
good.
so-
And so
That would
the
be planning
review could stay
commission.
at
It
the
wouldn't go all the way to council. It'd be commission for an amendment to the envelope.
I'd have to.
It might
double
have to
check
go
on
to-
that,
it
but
might
I'm
have to
not
go to
sure.
council.
It might have to go, it may have had to go to council for that, but it was presented to the applicant and they updated the plan so that they
Yeah,
would
that's
fit within
that's
the
probably
envelope,
smart.
so,
Okay.
yeah.
A few questions.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of ironic with 12.5 acres that you could end up 1.5 feet outside your building. to begin with. I guess that's not a question, that's more of a comment. Is the site already graded for the previous development?
Yeah.
So you already have a nice flat building area.
It's got a flat pad. The driveway needs some work to allow the fire engines to get up there and comply with 2 parking spaces.
So there'll be some grading there. Will it all be off all or is there going to be any fill?
No.
So just some cut and removal. And then another question kind of around the lines of the fire department. My understanding is the fire department thinks that, glass isn't flammable, but it doesn't do a really good job of slowing down a fire, if I'm getting that right. So I'm just sort of curious, has the fire department responded at all or reacted at all to the amount of glass on your?
Yeah, they haven't
project.
reacted to the amount of glass, but I mean, if you look at the structure, it's cement and steel. And then the glass fills in the area. So as far as the flammable nature of it, I mean, it's much less than, your traditional sort of wood-sided home or, even stucco with wood eaves and things like that. But no, the fire folks have not mentioned anything whatsoever about the glass.
And I'm the landscape architect, so I'm going to be a little ignorant here, but some questions about glass. Does code actually allow that much glass in a home? It does?
Well, Title 24.
As long as,
Title 24 will limit that, especially on the south face, which is what you have a huge expanse on the south face.
Yep.
So I'm not, Title 24 is going to limit that.
Yeah,
so-
and does code actually allow you to take glass all the way down to the floor?
Yes.
Well, 8 or 10 inches from the floor.
You can go all the way down. You can go to the floor if it's, you might have to make a beyond tempered. It might have to be actually safety glass.
Right, that's
but
what I
yeah,
was wondering.
you
And to
can-
meet the energy code, I mean, you may end up with triple glazing on here, but there's some systems out there. I mean, who knows? There's some clever engineers.
Yeah, no, it's, it does meet Title 24, the design of this. We've already, we've already addressed that in the plans. So it's not an issue from that standpoint.
What's
Okay.
the roof material? Is it
Metal.
It's metal, but I believe we're putting foam on it. I'll have to go back and look at the plans. We went back and forth on it for the R value of the foam.
That's it for me. Thanks.
And also that comment I think Renee had about the flat roof being exposed. And it backs up against, the open space there, the park. So I tried to get to it from the other side and you can't. So it's like, it's not like you're going to have a lot of people, looking down on the property per se.
No, and it won't get subdivided again either. It was a big fight to get this thing even subdivided in the 2000s. So,
No, we like it all open.
I have a question. When this was designed, did you know about the hillside requirements?
We had seen, I think Mr. Summers' previous client or the individual that was trying to buy it, we had seen his plans. And we had seen that it mentioned the Mediterranean style. But it's not fitting for the area. It's like an Eichler trying to put on a second story. It's having 3 stories in this location is, I think it's too much. I mean.
Right, but my question was, when you started this design, did you know that there were hillside design requirements?
Yes,
Okay, so you knew them and you chose this.
yes, because it's not fitting for the property.
I hear you. I just
Yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to know that you understood, you fully understood what you were doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. So I actually agree with what you said about it's much lower profile than an enormous Mediterranean might be there. The hillside design requirements notwithstanding, but so obviously one of the things to talk about is that large expanse of the retaining wall that holds up the pool. And is one of the reasons you decided not to articulate that or put in some sort of a planter to break it up because of that envelope issue? Is that why it had to be a solid wall, or is that it was just a design choice?
No, we're right up against that envelope and if depending on which part of the pool, we have more space to work with because I think the building envelope goes at a slight angle from there, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. But also the other thing is, as part of this, when we first submitted it, I knew one of the questions was about the landscaping. And as I mentioned before, I mean, we love the natural look that's there. But we're also, sensitive to the fact of, what it looks like from the ground and what it looks like from the neighbors and whatnot. So we're open to we're open to putting vegetation there. We also don't want to overstep as far as what type of vegetation, right? It's considered natural in that hillside. Obviously, I'm a big fan of oak trees and things like that. So if you guys told me that in the back of it you wanted more oak trees, I'm like, great. But the intent right now is just to leave it as much as possible in its natural state, but also to take into consideration, we don't want to.
That's my next question.
If you look at in Los Angeles, they've got so many hillside homes that have these crazy, 2-story walls, and it looks terrible. So yeah, we're sensitive to that, and we're open to ideas of what to put in front of that, make it look, more natural, if you will.
Just a quick note, just to bring everyone's attention to the screen. This is a part of the civil plan that does note the existing building envelope and where the residence is designed within it. So just you can see the topography lines get quite steep where there is not currently building, but just for awareness where that pool was moved to. You can see where it was just slightly outside.
So most of the pool is inside.
Now it
including-
is.
Now
Now it
it
is
is.
inside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
including the wall. Yeah.
So we were trying to do it, we like straight lines.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to keep the edge of the house at the edge of the pool. And the problem with that is, as Renee
The envelope,
mentioned, it stepped outside of the.
But you could slide the pool in the other direction, then you moved it and be well within your building envelope.
Yes, yes, we could.
I have one more question. The retaining walls for the driveway are between 4 and 9 feet. I have these tiny little drawings from the civil engineer. Could you tell us or walk us through where these walls are? And I mean, not where they are, but how tall they are, and where's the 9-foot wall? Where's the 4-foot wall, et cetera?
So if I.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so if my memory serves me, it was highest mostly in here.
Oh.
It's like in this area.
What about, I think you went behind the house.
And-
Oh, you went in front of the house?
No, I don't know where the
Oh.
tall walls are in this project, period,
Sorry,
besides the pool.
this is an existing asphalt road.
Mhm.
This road dead ends essentially right in here.
Right.
And this is a dirt road today.
Correct.
coming up here. And so this is the retaining wall that, I think the question was with regards to.
So what's kind of the range of heights for the retaining walls in that area?
Exactly.
No, I mean, what is the range of height?
Renee, do you have it? Can you read it?
I believe the tallest is 9 feet and the shortest is 4 feet.
But
So
where?
it is, yeah, and it starts, where does that, I'm having trouble reading these plans, they're so small.
Hard to read on.
Yeah. Here at this return where you can see that the additional parking is noted, this is where the tallest retaining walls will be. They are, it
All
is,
it says in 9 feet.
yeah,
And so the retaining walls is right up against the V ditch, the drainage ditch. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, and also just to be clear on this, this kind of looks back into that sort of gully area. There's one home. There's one home right there, but they face that direction. So this wall is not something that's going to be seen really by anybody.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of the site and that there's a gate, further down the road, it's really hard for us as members to get to the site and walk around it and evaluate it. So we're a little bit more dependent on information from you.
And if you ever want to meet up there, I'm happy to do that as well.
That'd be great.
And show it to you.
I mean, the renderings do show a little bit more clearly how those taller walls will be visible from lower down on the property. We can toggle back and forth to the other renderings if that's helpful.
Is it this one that?
No renderings that I have.
That, yes.
Yeah, Jeff. I think it's this one. It's like the third one back.
And the one right before that as well. I'll go back to the presentation.
I don't know, on sheet C1, which is what you just had up there, I'm going up and down this with my magnifying glass because I can't see anything anymore. I don't see the 9-foot walls based on Lee's plan on C1. I see that uphill driveway wall where the parking is go from 5, 5, 6, 3, 4. At the back of the house, where we get up to the house, on the eastern side of the house, that's where we have a 9-foot wall on that driveway, but personally, I don't see it coming up the driveway.
Is this what you're talking about?
That wall
yeah.
starts to get tall, yes. And then right where you get closer to your house, as it arcs and gets close to your house, it actually gets pretty tall.
Yes, right in here.
Yeah,
And
but
it
then
actually
everything as we start going down the driveway actually gets lower.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's what the numbers are saying.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And that changed a couple of times because where the parking ended up going.
We need magnifying glasses next time.
Now, those are way too small a drawing to figure out what the civil engineer was doing in terms of wall heights.
Okay,
All right, good.
thank you.
Thank you. That helped.
Absolutely. Any other questions that people might have?
Does the board have any other questions? If not, the chair opens the public hearing and asks staff to open up the public comments. Reminds the public that they have 3 minutes to speak and to be limited at the discretion of the chair.
Okay, so to comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. If commenting by phone, please press *9. Once you hear a notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6 to mute yourself. Or if you're in City Hall, please feel free to come up to the podium.
Hello, my name is Erica Blair. I live at 376 Margarita Drive, which is the house right below this proposed dwelling. I am interested in this project particularly because I moved to San Rafael after losing my last home in a wildfire in 2020. And so in terms of thinking about the fire safety of this project, it's a particular concern to me. I also sit on Ready Country Club, which is the Firewise community board for Country Club. And in terms of thinking about the fire mitigation and in general, the project, one of the biggest concerns I have is that where this hillside that the house is on meets my home is a sheer vertical wall of rock. And I am really interested to know what kind of studies might need to be done to determine the safety of building a property up there, and especially putting such a large, heavy tank of water up on this hill. I'm not entirely certain about the stability of the hill, and I also know that it's impossible to buy landslide insurance. And so there is no way for me to protect myself if this home is to destabilize the hill, because I am directly beneath anywhere that it would come down onto. And so that's, I think, a huge concern of mine. In addition, thinking about the path for the fire trucks to get up and to get back around. I see that hairpin turn. I have many questions about what construction is going to be like given that hairpin turn as well. But in particular with the fire mitigation, I think that's probably my biggest concern. We just had a fire in June, 0.1 miles from my property. And so this is a present danger and not something that I want to take lightly. We also live above a vast eucalyptus forest that can catch fire very easily. So this is pretty much the very definition within San Rafael of the wildland and urban interface in terms of the highest risk properties that are in the city. And so I would ask that extra caution be taken with this project with regards to the fire risk, because there's practically no greater area where the fire could come over from China Camp. It could come over from a lot of different directions, and it could come up the hill from the eucalyptus grove too, though. So thank you so much. I appreciate the chance to speak.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Teresa Campbell. I've been here many, many times before with the project on 366 Margarita. I know you. But anyway, my question is this new current proposed property built on solid rock, or is there moving soil? Because if you could bring up one of the videos of when you brought up the building, the proposed home, there's 2 slides above that I would like to point out. So bring up the design, his design of his, not that one, bring up another one. You see this here? Go back, please. Go back. You see this line here and that line up there? Those are all slides. Those are all water slides that occurred during storms. And in 1985, our property came right onto Margarita into Helga's property across the street. And there's been numerous slides since. So I don't mind you building a piece of property, but what I do want to know is it on bedrock? Is it on landslide? It is on fill. If there was a big slide, a big winter, would it come down onto Jennifer's property that's sitting up here? Would it come down onto your property? Would it come down onto my property? So I would like to see that kind of research presented here, not about the design. And the previous design was not a 3-story. It was a 1-story. It was the Mediterranean. And it was actually on my property. I actually had to come down here. The pool was 3 feet into my property. So if you do build, I'll be checking on that. Just be aware of that. So that's my main concern. And then I built a new driveway at 366 Margarita. And one of the big things that I had to do was to put a shitload of money into it so that a fire truck could come up and turn around. Can a fire truck come up and turn around the current plan? Because it's concerned. We're all concerned with the fire. And the climate's getting warmer and there's bigger fires. And this is something that I'd like to see the design review look into before the approval. And if all of that's okayed, then approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just a reminder for the attendees on Zoom, we have a 2 here. If you'd like to provide any comment, please raise your hand via Zoom. All right, I'm seeing none in Zoom. and I'm not seeing anybody else in City Hall.
Then we will close the public hearing on this topic. And the chair calls on the board members to ask follow-up questions of staff. Or if there are any comments by the board members. And if there's any discussion.
I'm actually curious if we might know the answer to her question about the base that the house will be built on. Is it rock or is it soil? Do you happen to know, Mr. Kelly?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm not sure if it's on bedrock. However, we did have soil studies done. There was actually a soil study done a long time ago, but we actually had somebody else do it and update it. And we're happy to share that with you. But yeah, it's solid ground to be built on. So no issues with it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. If we open it back up to the applicant, then we must let the public speak again by
Yeah,
law.
because one of the things, when we built a new driveway onto our home, every 7 feet, we had to have it tested. So you know how much money that is? But that was to test for bedrock or soil. And that was just building a driveway. So I would like to think and hope a lot of testing has been done to build a structure of this size that's holding up a concrete wall and a swimming pool.
And I addressed one of the public comments. Is that everyone to the board is closed though?
We're
Oh,
over to
I have
board
one
comments now?
Clarification.
Are- I'm not sure.
Yeah, you can call on one of us to start talking.
Okay,
Oh, is it me?
yes.
I'll start. Okay. All right. Well, zeroing into what Renee's most interested in, I think at first, which was, compatibility of the design with the hillside guidelines. And my opinion is that I like it. I think we have a very eclectic. I did a talk once for a bunch of realtors about the predominant style of architecture in San Rafael, even on hillsides. And I showed slides and I showed 20 slides of 20 different styles of homes. And I asked everybody, what do these homes have in common? Because the styles were so vastly different. And the thing in common they had is they were all within a quarter mile of each other. So to answer the question of, does it need to be a Mediterranean or modern or a Craftsman or whatever, if I see another Mediterranean house on the hill, I think I'm going to be like, I'm cooked. So I'm really on board with the modern design. I think the colors do need to get muted. It does stick out, but this site at this spot, from certain vantage points, if they're visible, it's going to stick out no matter what. You're on the Blake spot of this hill. So I think some care being given to color selection. If you come back, have that thought about. The massing, the flat roof, I do agree with, to the point of staff on the hillside guidelines, visible flat roofs. This is not a visible flat roof. I don't know what site this flat roof is going to be visible from. In fact, because it's flat, it's going to make this house less visible as far as I'm concerned from down below, because we won't see a roof plan. So I'm okay with the flat roof and the modern design. In terms of that downhill retaining wall at the pool, we got to do something about it. It's too tall, it's too linear. It does need to get broken up. So how that's done, if you slide the pool over, if you pull the entire house up in the envelope a little bit, I don't know what that means for retaining walls uphill, but certainly maybe you and Lee should study, because inherently, because that's the flat spot, if you bring the house up the hill a little bit, that wall is going to come down. So I don't know if there's a combination of breaking that wall up, changing its materials a little bit, sliding the pool over, some landscape introduction, which is a slippery slope because of fire. So you'd have to work real closely with what plant selection is with your landscape architect, which is going to be required. You're going to have to do a vegetation management plan for this project. So that's just a required document. I'll let Jeff speak more to that. So style wise, to answer those questions, I don't have any issues with it. I find it equally as appropriate as any other design style, personally. The fire tank, I think that's a big question, because we are again talking about another structure. So I think you really need to let the community know and the staff and us, what's that going to be? Or if you go to an alternative method, or if they've finally reneged on that requirement and letting you pump in a different way, that would be great information. To the public, the slide and fire comments, the materials being suggested here are highly fire resistant. So I don't think the house isn't going to catch on fire and cause a problem. So I'm confident about that. And the fact that there really is no fuel around this house, there's no trees around it. So I don't think this house is going to be the ignition point or contribute largely to a big fire event. Again, my opinion, but just logic's telling me, you're not in the middle of the forest. So I think you're good there. Hydro, she's right, you're gonna have some robust soils reports. There are some slides on the property. You probably looked at John Hom's old report, and I don't know who you have on board now, but I trust your engineering team, especially with such a good civil engineer, that you don't want the property to slide either. I mean, obviously. So you're gonna be the recipient of a lot of interesting information on this. And we talked about the hillside items. So that's basically my comments. I do feel like on a project of this nature and scale, I was a little confused when we got the materials, if this was a conceptual review or design review. And, I caused a little rumblings downtown. I'm sorry, by asking lots of those questions, because I didn't know what we were doing here tonight. So if we are offering a recommendation to the ZA on this project, I feel that this package was missing a lot of information in terms of, I would come back, if you're coming back, I would come back with actual colors, some samples, landscape plan, this answer to the fire tank. You've got enough here from Lee that's done, a preliminary grading and drainage. You've got the geotech, if you got it, all these things that are causing some concern with your neighbors too. If that was brought forth, I think it would make everybody a lot more comfortable. Those are my comments.
Okay, are there other board member comments?
Sure. In a lot of ways, I found this a really difficult hillside project to think about, in that it doesn't meet any of the hillside guidelines. But you also have a unique site where you already have an existing flat building envelope, which is almost unheard of in the hillside. So they have no choice but, to step the house down the hill, et cetera, et cetera. And usually there's so many guidelines that it almost designs the house for you. So you have a unique site in that you do have a flat envelope, and you are keeping the house a fairly low profile. In fact, the house that was approved for this site, I don't think met any of the hillside guidelines either. It would have been worse in every respect. And the pool kind of steps down the hillside a little bit. So you kind of a little bit in spirit have met the guidelines. I think the real concern is you really do need a landscape plan. I think you need to use your landscape to mitigate some of these tall walls. And even though the walls behind your house are really tall and you won't have off-site views, I think you're going to want to soften the wall even for your own benefit. And obviously a 17-foot wall for the pool has to have mitigation in some way. If you really want an infinity pool, like we said, you could have slid the pool in the other direction than you did slide in. It would allow you that opportunity. And it may actually allow you to do a secondary wall below that. So now you've broken it up into two walls. Now you've got a planter that you can plant in, and now you've mitigated that wall to a great extent. So you're going to need a landscape plan. Couple of other things on the site is you have some exotic plants. You have some broom, which are highly flammable. You have a big grove of that. You'll need to remove that. And there's also some pampas grass, and if you don't remove that, that'll spread all over the site. So you have a little bit of a challenge there with some exotic plants. I guess the one concern I have, and I don't know how you mitigate it, is there's so much glass there, and it's the distant view at night. I mean, that's just gonna kind of light up like a beacon, and I think you'll see you'll see your house for miles. And I'm not really sure what you do about that. And that, again, that really isn't in keeping with the hillside guidelines either. So I think that'll be a tough one for you. But I'm with Stuart. I mean, I like modern homes. I think this is interesting and well designed, and looks like it'd be a great place to live, but again, the walls are there's mitigation for the walls. I just don't know what the mitigation is for the long view at night. And those are my comments.
Are there further comments from the board?
Yeah, I agree mostly with what's been said. And, back when I asked the question about, is there room to do a planter? I think anything you can do to break up that big wall so it doesn't look so fortress-like would be really helpful. In terms of the colors, I personally don't think a house has to look like it's camouflaged into the hill. But I think, just on these early renderings, it's very stark white, and there's a way to soften that a little bit so it won't, stick out so far. But I really do like the design, and I feel it's innovative and it's sort of future looking. And I do think that the low profile is going to make it sort of integrate better.
All right, I have a few comments. I think your renderings are not doing you a service here. I think you need to get a more architectural rendering, because the walls don't seem to be at the heights that the civil engineer says, and the colors are wrong. Anyway, I highly recommend you get a really nice quality rendering so that you look better at the next meeting. I don't see how the fire truck turns around. Like, where's the 25-foot circle?
There's no comment right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, there's no comment from the public at this time. You do, you have to meet all the fire requirements. And I think the colors need to be worked on, and I think you need to have some respect for the design guidelines of the hill. Like, there is it's what the city is requiring of you. And while I like a modern house too, maybe a bright white house that lights up like a beacon, like a lighthouse. That's what it'll look like at night. Also, I think in respect to the environment, it's a south-facing glass pane in a ever-warming climate. And I think the energy you're going to use to heat and cool that is going to be large. And so I'm surprised that you've passed Title 24 already. If you have, then it's okay, but it doesn't look like it would meet it. And in summary, I think what the board is saying overall is that the colors need to be more muted. You have to really get into the structure of the foundation and make sure that we're doing the right thing for that. Fire mitigation for your planting. And the pool is really a design problem that needs to be solved. That wall is 17 feet tall. Infinity pool or not, doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying you need a better design on that pool, on the pool wall. And the next time you come, to have a complete package of professionally rendered building drawings. And I think that ends my comments.
Can I add one real quick?
Yes.
Every single family home and being built, every dwelling unit actually is required to have solar as part of energy compliance. So since we know it's going to be required to have solar, it'd be nice for us to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
We can't judge on it. We can't, by code, we can't really tell you can't or where it has to be, but we know it's going to be there. It actually might change. If it's going to be part of this flat roof, it's something you might want to think about showing us what you're going to do.
Right. I'd like to ask for a motion from the board, unless there's more comment.
Actually, does staff have consensus?
I just have one clarifying point. Is that okay? I just want to say in terms of the fire turnaround, that was an issue with the original submittal in terms of the 25-foot turnaround that has been reviewed thoroughly by the fire department and Public Works, and the most recently provided civil drawings that are available have been approved until officially approved by not stamped, but it has been reviewed by fire and Public Works, and they've worked with the civil engineer
Okay, good to know.
on that. Yeah.
It doesn't look like it here.
The renderings in this particular case do not represent that very, but
Yeah.
the civil drawings do represent.
That I
the
just got
most-
today.
Oh, no, the civil drawings that were available with the staff report.
I think
that
they
was published
utilize
last week.
hammerheads
Yeah.
instead of a circle.
Oh, okay.
So if the board wishes, I can do a summary of the items that it sounds like there's agreement and as well as it sounds like there's a couple items that maybe we need to confirm agreement or disagreement.
Mhm.
So first off, it sounds like there's agreement that the colors need to get muted, although member Alexin mentioned maybe not necessarily having to match the ground, but offering some level of creativity. In terms of providing additional materials, so providing color samples, landscape plan, particularly as it relates to fire management, making sure the fire department reviews it. In terms of the tank for water, so whether they do need to provide a tank or if there's some other option, really providing a robust description of what that's going to entail and what's going to look like if it's potential to be quite large and have an impact visually. Providing geotechnical analysis, improved renderings, as well as showing solar panels on the proposal. So maybe I should stop there. Does that pretty much cover the additional materials that?
Did you say landscape?
Yeah, landscape
Okay.
plan as well. Yep. Okay, and then yeah, definitely agreement on the retaining wall for the pool being too large. And I think you all provided different ideas such as changing the material, finding a way to possibly move it in a way to terrace it into multiple walls instead of having one large one, adding landscaping, possibly adding a planter into it, whatever, any of these different methods for the applicant to consider to propose. And then I think in terms of the area, maybe we want to get a little more agreement or confirmation on is relates to the glass. I think Vice Chair Kowalski and Member Kent mentioned the concern for being quite a beacon of light during the nighttime. So I don't know if the other two board members want to weigh in on that, if there's a concern in terms of the amount of glass.
I don't know. I feel like any home that's gonna be here is gonna have a large number of windows no matter what, because that's where this amazing view is. So we're gonna have offsite impacts from the interior light, no matter what we do. I mean, of course, the exterior light fixtures are all gonna be shielded and downlight and dark sky compliant and all that good stuff. I don't really have a good answer, except I do think any home that gets built there is gonna have offsite impacts from the interior light, and I don't think they're gonna have 1,000-watt bulbs in their house, but I guess you never know. And so I'm not gonna say limit the glass because of offsite light.
And I would say the same thing. It's just more practical consideration, in terms of heating and cooling and what's the best way to mitigate the issues, from a south facing wall with glass. But no, I don't have a problem with glass.
And if it passed Title 24, bring it in. Let's see it.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to ask for a motion? I'd like to ask for a motion and remind the board members to announce their name.
Okay, so this is an ED, correct?
Right.
It's not a formal schematic. It's not a conceptual review. This is a real review.
Right. So I guess that's up to the board in terms of if you're requesting additional materials to be brought back to you for additional consideration. Yeah.
I'll make a motion. Board member Stuart Summers moves that we continue the project to a future meeting to allow the applicant to respond to the consensus items and work with staff to bring this item back to us with the revisions we've suggested.
Is there a second?
Member Kent seconds the motion.
And would you like to have any discussion on the motion, board members? If not, I'd like to ask for a roll call vote.
Okay. Member Alexin,
Aye.
Member Kent.
Aye.
Member Summers.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kowalski.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Motion passes. And our second item is not on the agenda anymore.
Right, and so I can just briefly mention, so the applicant for that item, what is the address? 275 and 281 Coleman Drive. So that was a proposal for 2 new single-family houses and a sort of reconfiguration of lots. So the applicant provided a memo last night to staff indicating that they would like that item to be removed. And the real reason is they are seeking to pursue potentially a project pursuant to Senate Bill 9.
Oh,
And if they do that, basically it would not come to consideration for, it would not be subject to any public hearing. It would require ministerial review. So the applicant's still sort of seeking internally. They think they can revise the project to comply with all of the objective standards, in which case they can go the SB 9 route. So just
Okay.
wanted to provide that.
very good. Where do we go? Do we next move to the director's report?
Absolutely. And I actually do not have anything particular value for you tonight. I am working on the objective standards to come back to you, getting delayed, but hoping to bring that back in December, knock on wood. So yeah.
Are there any board communications to staff at this time?
Just that we're grateful that for the first time in probably a decade, that the boards and commissions meeting is not the same night as a DRB meeting.
Oh.
It was always go to the party, come to a meeting.
Oh.
So thank you, staff.
All right.
You don't want like, DRB members drinking wine and coming to do a project.
Right.
If there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Did I?
Yeah, trial under fire.